All
Yeah,
right.
you're good.
Hello. Welcome to the podcast. I'm back again here with my old friend Kyle Brine. He was nice enough to come back for a second round. We're going to sort of recap his great work, getting rid of excess sort of dry wilderness and foliage that can become fuel for to create wildfires in California at Lassen Volcanic National Park. He was looking to get involved in activism in where he lives in California, and so he just got started with that. Last time we talked, we were about to get into his time in the Adirondacks, and we sort of missed it. And he also does great sort of botany photography, pictures of flowers that he posts to Instagram. He's got a pretty great collection on Instagram. You should definitely check it out. There will be a link in this video. Uh, Terrific. Kyle Bryan, welcome back, man.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me.
So where are you right now? You're like parked. You said you've been sort of exploring a few miles south of where you live.
Yeah, I'm a little to the I'm a little to the west of where I've been living up by Lassen, toward the town of Red Bluff.
Oh shoot.
It's down lower, so up where I've been living, it's very snowy still. And here it's actually kind of hot, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I was walking around a bit and kind of sweating in my jeans, so it's heating up here. In the summer, it's really hot here. Like you get out of like an air conditioned car, and it's just like being slapped with heat. Like it's like takes your breath away, honestly, sometimes. So
It's
it's
it. Yeah. It's
yeah,
crazy to see you in that setting, like in California, in the heat, basically with the sun still way up. The sun is literally like setting outside my window right now, and because you're 3 hours
yeah,
behind, quote unquote. I can't even tell
yeah,
you
yeah.
how crazy it is to see you in this format, and not like some room. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
I'm gonna have to try and take this podcast outside a little more often. When we're not in the red zone here in Connecticut and and so on and
Right, for sure.
so forth. What about where you're at? Are you guys okay? Are you in the red zone as well? What's going on?
In terms of
The COVID thing.
yeah, I think things are kind of moderate risk here is my understanding. Everyone up where I work and live is actually vaccinated at this point, which is super fortunate.
Yeah, right
So,
on.
I think as long as we're just kind of the people I've been working with in Chico also are all fully vaccinated too. So I think yeah.
Right
I
on.
mean, still not going around licking,
No. Yeah. No.
licking
Licking
doorknob, but don't
yeah,
definitely feel
licking
a lot more
doorknobs is
relaxed.
over, everyone. Yeah. Your licking doorknob days are done.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's true. God, those are the days you could just lick doorknobs with impunity.
sometimes I really miss it.
I know. We'll
So,
get through it, Will.
thanks, man. Yeah, we're all in this together. Even I'll let that one roll. But so yeah, you were about to get involved in activism, and this is very impressive. In the say you're going to get involved in activism world, you said you were going to get involved in activism. You were looking around for a place, and within a few weeks, you had actually found your group and are now participating in events with them. You're with the Sunrise Movement in
Yeah, that's right.
California. How's that going?
It's going well. We're in the midst of trying to plan something for April 7th. Um, nation
Shoot.
Nationwide, actually, youth-led movement, meaning most people are younger than me, trying to address the climate crisis and also address like economic and racial inequality. And they The big piece of legislation they've been pushing for is the Green New Deal, which is a lot more well known, I think, than the Sunrise Movement itself. And Yeah, on April 7th, nationwide, a lot of what are called hubs, which are like the smaller, like
Mm.
the local. There are gonna be a lot of hubs that are trying to push to create a lot of jobs in in order to basically like better prepare us to face like the changing climate and basically be able to uh, survive more sustainably in this country.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a tiny bit of lag every so often. We'll power through. I think we'll be okay. But so I do want to mention, I know a couple things about the Green New Deal off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I think it was like about there was going to be a 70% tax on wealth. Don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure this was it. It was a 70% tax on wealth annually or income annually after $10 million. So you can make your first $10 million free and clear with the Green New Deal. And then after that, it's like a 70% tax. I don't know if you heard anything about that, or have you learned it? I guess what I'm trying to say is, have you learned anything new about the Green New Deal since you joined the movement?
Right. Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, what you're talking about with taxes, I mean, the Green New Deal itself is kind of a, like, if you read it, it's a pretty broad kind of document, more like laying out
Yeah.
a vision, more so like her tax plans along the lines of like what you're talking about right now.
Hmm.
I don't believe that that's anything specific like that in the Green New Deal itself.
Okay.
So yeah, I hear different, different tax plans proposed by progressives like Bernie Sanders, at different
Right.
times. But yeah, I think in the end, as you may be aware, like during the
Oh, shoot.
essentially in the course of just the past year been a massive like flow of wealth from the bottom up to the top, and that's been
Wow.
happening on a smaller scale for decades in America. So there's
Yeah.
just been, so it's, the rich are getting much richer, the very rich are getting very rich,
Yeah.
while the rest of us are not doing so.
Right. That's a very good point, Kyle.
Taxing, I think that, yeah.
Yeah. It's weird, like, because technically, with this crazy fallout and my reaction to it, technically um I have compared to what I normally have, I have a decent amount of money just compared to what I normally have. And even
Right,
that
right,
is still very much not very much. In fact, I I'm only made more aware of how on the razor's edge my finances have been like for the past 10 years. And absolutely
right.
I sincerely hope I wish the best for people in the South and in more economically damaged areas. Um, I hope we can really figure out a way to help them, and creating jobs through the Sunrise Movement is a very exciting opportunity. So I'm glad that's sort of in the works over there and in other spots where the Sunrise Movement is. Um, yeah, so many thoughts about that. But I'm almost losing my place. I have so many thoughts about that. But so really quick, just sort of doubling back to you and your day. I sort of called and we were getting set up for this, and um, I was like, "How you doing? How you doing?" And you were like, "Good," like so. It sounded like a real genuine good. So what happened today? What is it? The sun just shining, or why are you in a good mood?
Yeah, I mean, the sun is shining. That's definitely a nice thing, down. uh I'm glad to be out in the valley right now with a lot of wildflowers blooming. It's just it's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
and also I'm just kind of excited to the fact that, like, I've been kind of talking with this, trying to organize things with the Sunrise Movement here for things are kind of moving. I've been having a bunch of conversations with different people and actually making plans, and
Yeah.
feels good. That's a lot of it. Just kind of feeling like,
Yeah.
okay, we're doing things now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
No, I
that's
really like that a lot because like it's hard to sort of get out of the realm of sort of complaining with a group of friends
right.
and then going over and like really trying to find actionable things to do. And and then on top of that, when you start going over to the actionable work, not all your friends come along. So the notion that you get to really connect with people who want to work on the same towards the same goal, very, very exciting. So we were gonna sort of recap your work, which is basically, like, so I do want to explain for people, kind of trying to learn about what you do, because there's a very like small select group of people in the US who do it. Um, basically, uh, your group is against the language saying that you prevent forest fires. You prefer mitigate forest forest fires. You try to
Yeah.
basically create controlled burns, so that the extra debris in the forests won't lead to these crazy wildfires, something like that, right?
Yeah, as I think pretty much everyone knows at this point, that wildfires are getting super, super out of hand.
Right.
And an important part of that is climate change. People talk about that a lot, and it's great that people talk about it. And I love climate change, man. No, and another part of it that doesn't get as much attention is that for the past century or so, the government policy about wildfires has been to put them out as soon as possible, and led to an accumulation of just trees and just wood material just on the ground, and standing up in forests that normally would naturally burn but
Hmm.
haven't burned because they haven't been let to burn, because the natural areas in this part of the world, like the western half of the country, fires just have been happening for thousands of years,
Right.
regularly. So by putting them out as soon as possible, we've created conditions where there's a lot of dry wood line, because that's what it is. It's the fuel that lights these fires. So we
Right.
use the word fuel to just refer to anything around that could burn.
Right.
And yeah, so what my crew does in the summer is we prepare for prescribed burns, which is where, in a controlled conditions, you light this material on fire, so that when a fire comes through naturally, it doesn't have as much to burn, doesn't do as much damage as it would do otherwise.
All
um
right. Right on.
yeah.
Very good, very good. So last time we talked about sort of your schedule in terms based around your eating habits, your diet. You start at 7 a.m. You go to 5:30. You break around noon for lunch, and so I realized later we talked about like when you eat, but we hadn't actually talked about what a day in the life is like, like
Yeah.
maybe how many sites you visit in one day, stuff like that. So it's Monday through Friday, right? Uh
It'll be it kind of depends, but the schedule that we've done the most often is 8 days of work in a row and then 6 days off.
oh wow.
Um, yeah, so it kind of gives you a chance to really get in the groove when it comes to the work, and then get like a mini vacation. And it's really nice work schedule. Like I really love to have that schedule for this kind of work at least.
That's a
Um,
fascinating schedule, definitely.
yeah, so it'll
Yeah.
be 8 10 hour work days in a row, and then like a mini vacation. So it ends up being so it's basically just like 2 40 hour weeks just with all the work kind of squashed in one part of it.
Yeah, no, all right. So let's start with the days off, honestly, because I think people must be like, what on earth is six a 6 day off? Like, it's that kind of, even with the 8 days working, I think a lot of people couldn't even imagine having a fifth day off in a row that isn't some
Right,
horrible accident, like
right, yeah, yeah.
so,
I
so
I mean, we're in a beautiful like part of the world here, so my favorite thing to do, honestly, is just explore the different areas around here. Go
mhm,
hiking, go botanizing, meaning just like looking for plants and figuring out what things are and documenting them.
yeah,
And whatever folks are up, like whatever my friends feel like doing. Um, obviously, like last summer was in the midst of COVID, so there uh, wasn't really much to
yeah,
do other than be out in nature, which I love
yeah,
to do anyway. So for me, I have to do relatively little adjustment to what
right.
I enjoy to do. Very
Yeah,
fortunate about that.
that is fortunate. I kind of noticed that right away. I don't say this often. I really do like your Instagram. You just like
Oh, thank
have,
you.
yeah, you have this like great variety of flowers, that are pretty well photographed in my opinion. Interesting subject matter, and you do it as like a kind of series. And so we're gonna get to that sort of towards the end here, but I just wanted to so you mentioned that you sort of find these new plants and categorize them. So what's for a sneak peek, like what's one that you saw recently that went into your book or something like that?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Last weekend I was hiking Table Mountain by Chico, which is in California,
Wow.
with a couple friends of mine, and we saw a lot of wildflowers blooming out there. One cool one. There's I'm forgetting the common name, but the Latin name is Streptanthus tortuosus, um, which is like, I guess you probably common name could be something like twisted jewel flower,
Huh.
because that genus is often called jewel flower and tortuosus means twisted. So I'm kind of inventing a common name right there. I can't remember what the common
That's
name
a
is.
great
It
common
sounds kind of
name.
cool though, doesn't it?
That was cool. Yeah.
Just
I
like the
would
literal translation.
if
Yeah.
I if I like picked up a book that was like the Ballad of the Twisted Jewel Flower, and even if it was like
Yeah.
very textbook like just like photos and like descriptive stuff, I would be like, you know what? I gotta take this home. I gotta learn more about this twisted flower, you
Yeah,
know?
I love a good plant name. A lot of times it just gets, sometimes names they really like hit the mark. They're really like, cool. Other times they just like a lot of like the scientific names, the Latin names are just like named after like people, like the last
Yeah,
name of some botanist or other.
right.
It's pretty
Yeah.
lame as far as I'm concerned. But sometimes you get really colorful, interesting kind of names
Yeah,
like
it
there's
helps.
one plant there's one plant around here that's called the Latin name is Sarcodia, I think Sarcodia sanguinea, which
Uh-huh.
literally means bloody corpse in
Yeah.
Latin. uh it's the plant itself is it's like a parasitic bright red plant that
Yeah.
pops up early in the early in the spring. It's called snow plant because it'll just be like snow and these little red like things sticking up, and someone's like, "Oh yeah, it's like a bloody corpse," and
Yeah.
so I appreciate like dramatic names like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to throw in this tidbit. You did I remember this. You took Latin in high school and you actually remembered stuff. Yeah, you would
I,
come come back with some Latin facts that were always pretty interesting.
I've had to look up stuff a lot too, you know. But yeah, it's true
Absolutely.
that did learn some Latin in high school, and that's helped. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
no, I
yeah,
mean, maybe I'm exaggerating. Yeah, of course you'd still need the help of the internet, definitely.
yeah, a lot of looking up names. Yeah, yeah,
That-
definitely.
That's cool though, man. I took a linguistics course actually in college. It was hard.
Oh,
It was
nice.
really hard. Yeah, but I learned about this. There was some subculture in sort of what is it? Sort of indigenous nation or something like that, and they had a really weird sort of class system where the person in the lower class had to be the person who initiated a conversation, I
Huh.
guess, when two people were talking. And so if there was confusion about like who was the lower in the class, if they were like pretty close in rank, like if two of those people met, they would actually kind of like face off and like wait to talk to each other until like one of them gave in. Something strange like that.
Do you remember where that was?
I wish I could. I'll never forget the story. It was like a sub culture because it's also in linguistics. It's not just your accent. There's dialects within whatever region has the accent, and there's
Yeah.
categories and subcategories. It's a lot of studying just to even kind of sound like you know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely complicated, and there's a lot there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, all right. So let's get back to day in the life of a wilderness Sawyer fuels module adjustment forest fire mitigator. So we talked about
Yeah.
sort of your day off time. So you're 4 days into your 8-day work week. Sort of what are you up to on the average?
Yeah. So we're gonna be hiking in at the beginning of the day. So 7 a.m. tends to be the beginning of the work day. Um, so I'm thinking I'll just think like in terms of like last summer specifically what we would end up doing. So like we would drive out from we're staying the night in our cars outside of the of Ranger Station by Juniper Lake in Lassen Volcanic National Park.
Right.
Um, we could have put up tents, but there wasn't really a great spot to put up tents, so we were kind of we've all like slept out of and lived in our cars before, so it kind of was just the natural thing to do to just stay in our cars,
Yeah, I
and
can
then
kind of
use
see your
the
camp setup in the background in the background there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the next couple nights I'll be living out of my car the next couple nights. So yeah, so um yeah, so yeah, so we'll use the ranger station, like the bathroom and the kitchen there and everything, but then actually sleep in our cars.
Hmm.
And yeah, so in the morning we'll drive out, start work at 7, start the day off by just kind of stretching and talking about um, safety. There's something called a safety circle where we all go around and bring up something that's on our mind about, some safety concern we've had or some ideas. It's just something to bring up so we're all starting off um, with that on our minds because the
Right.
the work is dangerous, and so it's just important to uh, to have that at the top of our minds. Um,
It's a great
and
point.
and so from there then we'll hike in. I think last summer probably the farthest we got it was maybe like a 2-hour hike in. um, it wasn't always that long, but yeah, we get all our equipment, so we'll be wearing like our backpacks with all our food and
Yeah.
gear in it, and carrying I'll have my axe with me, and
Right.
maybe I'll be carrying one of the crosscut saws kind of in like my backpack strap. You can kind of put one of these like 5 to 7 foot saws kind of nestled in there, kind of makes it a little easier to carry.
Oh,
Um,
right.
yeah, and then there's 6 people. Well, last summer there were 5 people. There ideally 6 people in a crew, and which makes 3 saw teams. Um,
Got it.
so each crosscut saw, if you're felling, it requires 2 people.
Right.
So for every saw we have 2 people,
Right.
and every every work week we would switch around which person we'd be working with, just so we can have a chance to work with everyone.
Right.
And I'm kind of losing my train of thought right there. So
No, that's okay. Yeah.
yeah,
So
you follow what
I
I've
mean,
been saying so far?
I mean that's what would actually happen on a day of work like that. You just get lost in the doing. So
True.
you wake up in your car, you drive out, then you hike in to the location. You got your
Yeah.
crosscut saw. That's actually really fun. You got your crosscut saw, you got the axe, and so you're usually so there's technically only 3 crosscut saws for ideally 6 people. So are you always choosing to carry in the crosscut saw?
Will just kind of vary. Like
Yeah,
there's because we have to bring in. We all have our own axes. We're bringing in,
right.
bringing in the crosscut saws. The handles are detachable, so we're bringing in handles. We're bringing in uh, plastic wedges, which are used to help fell over the trees.
Right.
So we'll usually have like maybe 5 or 6 wedges per team. Um,
Okay.
that's off the top of my head. Those are like the
Yeah,
main pieces of
where
equipment.
you were basically is you're you're all in it's 6 people, teams of two. You're
Yeah.
cutting trees mostly, I guess, or
Yeah, yeah.
like like dead trees.
Mostly dead trees. So
Hmm.
we're felling trees. Felling just means cutting down a tree. Just
Right.
we're felling trees alongside a trail. Um, the trail is going to be where firefighters are going to be walking. So we
Hmm.
want to make sure that we want to cut down trees that are going to pass fire over the trail if they
Hmm.
light on fire. So like if the canopy of the trees is like interconnected, we want
Wow.
to fell trees to open that up. And we also, on top of that, we want to fell any trees that are are damaged enough that they potentially could fall over the trail, which we call the line. Um, and so in the end, most of the trees that we take are hazard trees. So they're trees that are already compromised, are dead or dying. They're complex projects. Yeah.
Right.
So
And
yeah.
so is there you said you describe anything that can basically start these large wildfires as fuels. So what
Yeah.
else do you consider fuels besides these trees that you're felling?
Yeah, I mean, out where we are, any all vegetation basically is potentially a fuel.
Right,
Um, so living or dead, standing up or lying down, it's all fuel. Um,
right,
if you're talking about wildland, like town interface, then we would also say like houses are fuel. You know,
right.
um, literally, anything that can burn from this
Wow.
perspective is a fuel. But when we talk about fuels reduction, we're really talking about um, removing the like vegetation essentially, um,
Right,
mostly trees. Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, that is pretty hardcore to describe houses as fuel, I should probably mention, because I
I
just said
yeah.
I just knee jerk. I was like, right, yeah, I know that. Yeah, houses are fuel totally, but like actually like I'm sure if I was a homeowner in California, I was like, my house is not fuel. Like, like
I I had a I took a class in wildfire management, and the professor there is a fire scientist.
yeah,
He's like half joking saying like, oh, to me, like anything that burns is a fuel. He's like, trees fuel, this building fuel, my computer fuel, students, you fuel. And so that's really the truth there. So I was watering it down a little bit, actually.
Oh no,
Um,
yeah, and then I and then I encouraged the full truth. Yeah.
yeah, that's the full truth. But it's not saying, obviously not saying like, these things are nothing but fuel or something. Obviously, your
Right.
house is more than just fuel. It's where you live. You as a human are more than just fuel. But the point is that when it comes to like fire behavior, to a fire, your fuel, and so when you're managing, when you're trying to, mitigate wildfires or trying to keep them from being as bad as they might be, you're taking into account anything that could potentially burn. um yeah.
Got it. Got it. So is it not just trees in your work? Like, are you like uprooting stuff with like, gloved hands, stuff like that?
No, it's really just it's mainly trees. I mean, well, it is, it's
Right.
all trees. Sometimes there will be some smaller, like we'll clear some younger trees too if
Right.
they're like, if you have like a high density of like smaller trees along the sides of a trail, if that catches on fire and you're walking on that trail, it's going to be unbearably hot.
Right.
So part of what we'll do is just create a buffer where we cut down a lot of those smaller trees.
All
But
right.
the main thing, like our specialty as a crew, is felling the bigger trees.
Right.
Um, yeah,
So what's the average in a day? How many like trees are you felling in a full day of this?
yeah. It really depends. I think a day where we're really just focused on like felling the trees, and you have a full day to do that. It might be about 8 trees.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, but it really depends. Like some trees are very and we're talking trees that are 8 inches or bigger in diameter, counting that. We'll take a lot of like smaller trees like this, things that you can just use an axe to cut down.
Right.
um and but the trees like we're talking about, like one tree that we took late last season was, I think it was about 6 feet in diameter,
Wow.
which is enormous. Or it was like five to 6 feet. I can't remember exactly, but it was huge.
Yeah.
That's the biggest that we've ever taken. But it would be pretty common for us to take a tree that's like, can you even see my hands here? Like
Yeah, right. No, I
three,
can't. Yeah.
yeah, like 4 feet. I mean, 4 feet is huge, but like a tree that's like 3 feet in diameter, it's not rare for us to take a tree that's that big. And
Wow.
and also it's going to depend on like the complexity of the tree, how long it takes. Some trees, um, and this is hard to like explain just like verbally,
No, I
without just
understand.
like
Yeah.
being out in the woods and being like that tree, that's complicated, that's going to take a long time,
Yeah, right.
because you'll have to use like this, we'll use rigging equipment too, for more complex
Yeah.
trees, meaning we're
Well,
putting a
it's
rope up in there.
yeah. I think that's a great point. Is it's hard to verbalize some of this stuff because, uh, you know, uh, I've worked in farming for many years. Um, Unfortunately, that time in my life is probably sort of closing up. But like there's just some stuff you can't really negotiate with,
Yeah,
in manual labor work. And after a while, that kind of, at first that's really jarring, but later it becomes refreshing actually. That you know it's just that physical side, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hard to
So
explain certain things.
yeah, yeah. So uh you said you liked cool names, so I am actually struggling with the title for this episode. Since it's technically a sequel, I was thinking about Kyle to Brine. This time it's also personal. Uh but
I like that. I have to say, I like
that's
that.
fun, right? Yeah. So
Yeah,
so I was also debating about Kyle to Brine, more than just fuel.
more than just fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, each one, but I kind of like this time it's also personal. Like,
All right. Cool.
I
All
mean, I know
right.
it says I know this time I know it says nothing about the content of what we're talking about, but I kind of
All
like
right.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad. All right. All right. Great. All right. So let's get into the Adirondacks. You spent some time living and working in the Adirondacks, and sort of we were talking about it, and it basically seemed like kind of your personal life and getting to enjoy the Adirondacks was really the highlight of that time. But what were you up to in the Adirondacks, just for background?
Yeah, doing a number of different projects, basically broadly like trail maintenance and construction also.
Right.
Um,
And this
so
was
the
this
the
with that group AmeriCorps, the nationwide.
Yeah, it was with AmeriCorps for my first summer there. The next
Mhm.
summer I was working with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC. And the project that I spent the most time on was building a trail up in the High Peaks Wilderness in the Adirondacks, trying to essentially, like, there's this area there, like the most popular area to camp there, over the years, over the decades, has become just like kind of a free for all where there's just so many places people have camped and so many
Right.
places people walk that the whole like there's this kind of broad section that's just kind of all trampled. And so the managers there are like, you know what, this isn't like, it's supposed to be a wilderness area. We're trying to give people a wilderness experience. So they're the big plan is to like close down a lot of those campsites and like put material on the ground and kind of interrupt that whole space, build a new loop trail, and then some more spaced out campsites along that, so that there's as many places to camp, but not like, but definitely like much more spread out and kind of discouraging, people from just kind of walking everywhere and sort of trampling everything.
Right.
So I was working on the first year of that project where we were just we were making some campsites, but mostly just digging the trail that would go all the way around. And I say digging a trail because it was mostly a trail on the side of a hill where
Wow.
you're essentially like you're cutting into the dirt, to create that platform you're walking on, essentially. So like you're
Wow.
building a trail by essentially just by removing material, to get down to the more compacted mineral soil below
Wow.
like all that rotted like plant material that
Right.
yeah.
So what you're saying is you were on a really slippery, steep slope and you had to like dig that into a walkable trail.
Yes, yeah, that's
Okay.
right, yeah. So a lot, yeah, so people, I think even people who hike, I think aren't really aware a lot of the times of how much work goes into like making the trails they walk on. Because like a
Right.
good like backcountry trail, it just kind
Right.
of feels like it's just kind of there. It's like, oh, this is where people have been walking.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it has been like intentionally constructed and designed. And if it's not, there tends to be like a lot of erosion, or it's like super muddy, or like it's like crazy steep. If you have a trail that's like along the side of the hill and like relatively like, not like crazy muddy, not crazy steep, like probably some people put a lot of effort into making that the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. I have definitely taken a trail or two for granted. It's
Yeah,
true.
me too.
Sometimes I hike in sneakers and I'm confused if my feet get wet. So I think you're probably right. um, so cool. So you're in the Adirondacks. You said it was the high peaks in the Adirondacks.
Yeah, there's an area called the High Peaks Wilderness. It has Mount Marcy in it, I believe,
All right.
which is like
Awesome.
the highest peak that people like to talk about as like I think it's probably the most well-known mountain in the Adirondacks.
Yeah, I've heard of that
Which
one.
Right. So it has that and a number of other mountains in it. And yeah, that was where I spent most of my time when I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like what did you do for fun type of thing? Like just see movies or what was it?
Yeah, I mean, still, it's kind of like just being out about in nature, on my off days, um,
Right on.
and kind of, I was kind of getting into that. This is early in my career, and I was kind of more getting into like the whole crew life. So you're meeting a lot of interesting people, and
Yeah.
kind of being in situations that are different for me. Now I'm used to it, but the things of like being in a crew where you're living just together and working together for like days at a time out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Just that whole experience is very, different from like what I was used to beforehand, and then what I think most people's lives are like. It's it's different.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
think that
it's
sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, like, it's very cool. It's also there are a lot of difficulties with it. It's not definitely not for everyone, but it's definitely interesting.
Yeah. I'm sure there's been a time or two where uh sort of on this end of the stick, like you're kind of like, man, I wish I was actually like with a team that understood they were a team, is like hopelessly a team, uh that's definitely a benefit sometimes, I hope. um but I think that is a cool lifestyle. Oh shoot, I almost lost the thread here, but I actually wanted to double back to uh the wilderness, the fire fire mitigation project.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and this probably applies to clearing trails as well. But I think about carrying the axe, carrying the saw, sometimes 2 hours at a time to get to the site. You finally
yeah,
drop the stuff. I know what that's like. Dropping the stuff
yeah,
finally is
yeah.
amazing.
Nice.
So like
Yeah.
like it does make me think about, you're talking about getting into the career, getting into the life. Like did you have that moment in the early days where you were like, wow, how long am I carrying this crosscut saw for? Like, are we there yet? Stuff like that.
Oh, just like the pain in the ass of just like hiking long distances with lots of stuff
Yeah,
on
I
your
mean, like,
back, kind of thing.
yeah, sort of when you start up a new, sort of very physical career, you don't know what you're in
Yeah,
for. So, like, the
yeah,
first few
definitely.
times carrying this saw, was it kind of like you were sort of trained enough, sort of in shape in a way that it was just a different thing? Or was it really like, oh man, like, this is actually kind of a lot, like this crosscut saw right now?
Yeah, no, it actually was like, wow, this is so much easier than some other things I've had to do. Yeah, like in terms of like the carrying stuff, like I've had projects in the back country where you're doing rock work, you're moving
Right,
big rocks, and you have to bring in these things called rock bars, very descriptively. They're like steel poles that are like 5 or 6 feet tall.
right.
Um, and so if you're, so like I've had projects where I'm hiking in like really really heavy stuff and like a lot of stuff and far and like it through over difficult terrain
Yeah,
in earlier years. So this
right.
project, just like carrying like a saw and some stuff, I mean, I've had some days like we've had some days like going into the backcountry, like if we're gonna be just like living in the backcountry for a while,
Right.
um, where getting all the stuff, all your stuff like out there with your tools and everything you're gonna use to live,
Mhm.
that's like, wow, this is like my shoulders hurt so bad right now and I'm not happy right now.
Yeah,
But even then it's a lot less than I've had to deal with another time. So yeah, it's definitely something where
yeah,
it's like the parts of the job that are like, just moving, like hiking long distances and living out of your car, living out of a tent, or, carrying equipment, all that
yeah,
sort of stuff at this point is like, yes, I'm used to this as like part of part of the job. So the new thing was more the just the like more like the technique of, okay, how do we use this tool to like fell this complex tree, and I think
Right.
that's the advantage of having, hiring people who already have experience with backcountry work and life for this, so they can really just focus on, um, the technical demands of the specific thing, and not just be like, so I don't know how to deal with any, like, this is all so new to me, and I'm trying to, like,
Yeah.
figure out how to fell this tree. It's
Right.
just a lot easier when your crew has everyone already has that experience of backcountry living.
Right.
um I
Right
want
on.
to pause for 1 sec. I need to use the bathroom. Feel
Yep,
free to
totally. I know
edit
how to
this out.
edit now, so I can just chop this right out. Do your thing, man.
Sounds good.
My own thoughts as well. All
Sure,
right,
sure.
let's take it from, I believe, right. So you're doing this physical work, although, like you mentioned, a lot of the sort of the learning curve was more on the technical side.
Yeah.
But while we're on the subject, I was curious about, do you have to do any work sort of outside of the workday to sort of maintain, in terms of like stretching or chiropractor or stuff like that? Or
Oh yeah.
do you pretty much make it all happen on the work day?
Yeah. Well, I in the morning. Yeah, we will stretch in the morning as part of the workday. So we're kind of stretching and talking about safety at the same time.
Oh, nice.
Um, and at the end of the day, we have time built into the day to sharpen our axes. um, don't always You're not necessarily going to need to sharpen your axe every day, but you definitely might need to.
Right.
So yeah, we have time like set aside so we can do that. The saws only get sharpened at the end of the season. You have to be super careful with the crosscut saws because they're tuned like very, very carefully, so they cut like way better than you would think possible, honestly. um
Right.
and so you
That's
need to
good
just
to
make
know.
sure. Yeah, yeah. So you
I
need to
was
make sure that
I was thinking
that
of
you
like
don't.
the lame ass crosscut saw in the garage, with like
No.
rust on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's no, these are antique saws that were made like decades ago and have
Wow.
been like maintained and sharpened by this lady Dolly Chapman, who's just like an incredible sharpener, incredible sawyer and teacher. She's taught us all how to she was like our teacher for how to fell trees with crosscuts also.
Wow,
um
that's terrific.
and yeah, she's super cool. And
Nice.
Yeah, so you just need to make sure that you don't mess up those blades. If you mess up your axe, we can
Yeah.
fix those in the field, but the
Right.
crosscut saw, we can't fix that in the field.
So what's the relationship like to your crosscut saw? Are you like, I want the same one. I want the same one from last week or last year, Or is it just
We we,
like,
we
is
definitely have favorites, and you get a sense of like subtleties between the different saws. They're all named, like we have names for all the saws.
oh
Um,
yeah, that's
yeah,
the good stuff,
yeah,
man. All
yeah,
right,
yeah.
so what are the saws names?
The We got a saw. Let's see. So we got our first batch of saws we got were all named by someone who doesn't work with us anymore. And they were named what are they, like, all after characters in some movie or other. They're like superhero names or something, like
Oh,
Avengers
cool.
or something. I don't know. It's just like, so it's like Loki, Scourge,
Wow.
Hela, uh off the top of my head, yeah.
Those are all villain
Songs we've
names.
gotten more recently.
That's
Dylan
crazy,
also,
man.
Ronan. Yeah, I don't know. I
Oh,
don't know.
Ronan?
Yeah, those that I wasn't part of the naming process of those. So yeah, there's one
One
called
of
Ronan also.
So this is so
One of the
crazy
saws.
because I just interviewed two really big comic book writers, and we talked about Marvel at length. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
literally must have thought to myself, there's no way I will be talking about anything Marvel with Kyle. I was literally like, yeah, I talked to these two big comic book writers, and that was great. And then I'll follow that with Kyle Bryan. It'll be so different, like,
yeah, yeah.
like, and still we wander into into the Marvel universe. That's crazy, man.
I guess
Um,
so. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I don't know anything about that side. The only thing I know about those names is that they're the names of my saws. Like I don't know the connection to Marvel. I didn't even know they were Marvel until you said it just now.
yeah,
Uh,
well, like Ronin is, it's not just a character, it's a lifestyle, But I think there's actually a couple Ronin names in the comic book world. So I won't
gotcha.
jump down that rabbit hole, but that's crazy. That was the last thing I expected. I thought you were gonna say like Debbie, like
Yeah, yeah,
something with
yeah.
sauce.
No, I named my axe Mabel actually. We name our axes too. So I have an axe named Mabel, another axe named Turtle. Um, my buddy, a friend of mine's, he's just made a handle for an axe for me. He's started making his own handles, which is very cool. It's
Very cool.
and I don't know what
I,
I'm gonna name that one yet. I'm gonna have to see when I
nice.
get it, see what feels right. Uh,
I think it would be fun to talk to him in some format. Maybe you could even be there. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, I'll let
Um,
him. I'm gonna see him at some point in the next couple months. I'll let him know you're interested.
yeah, right on. Yeah, that's so cool. That's really cool, man. Mabel's a great choice. Yeah, I was going for a walk the other day, and this dog was barking, and I swear, like, the guy was like, trying to train the dog or whatever, and I think he called the dog Mayo, like
Huh?
Mayo, and I was like,
Huh?
I would absolutely name my dog Mayo if like I would poach that name big time. Mayo's great for dogs. Um, yeah, speaking of, like, so you live in these like crazy scenarios. Have you ever thought about getting a dog?
It would be really a pain to have a
Yeah,
dog. I live in my car like parts of the year, and I
yeah,
move around a lot. Um, so the idea of having like I'll fantasize with like other people on crews I've had about like having like a crew dog, a dog that's like
yeah,
following us around and stuff. It would have to be so well trained and everything, but it would be so
yeah,
cool,
yeah,
just like be like, hey, Fido, like, can you move these sticks over here? And just like be like the moral support of having a dog around. It would be so awesome. But yeah, it's definitely a pipe dream. Yeah, not
yeah.
something that's gonna happen. Yeah.
Do what people did in college, man. Just go to the nearby puppy store or pet store and just like stare at them for a couple hours. That's how we handled that. Killed
Yeah.
time. All right. So I actually we kind of we kind of not that there's a time limit, but we kind of ran over as is usual. But
Yeah.
I'd love to keep you on the line and talk about your botany photography a little bit. So
Sure.
when
Yeah.
did you really sort of get into that? What's your gear? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I started getting into trying to like learn the names of plants like a couple years ago. And just kind of slowly kind of got pulled more and more into that until I'm like, you know what, there are like kind of jobs for this too. So why don't I like see if I can like learn that skill set, kind of add to kind of what I can do professionally. Um and the plant photos, it's funny hearing like it's nice hearing like compliments of the plant photos and everything. It's also really funny to me because I really don't know what I'm doing with the photographs. Like
Right.
I like I basically like I was taking plant photos for maybe a year before I started the Instagram page, like a lot
Yeah.
of photos to try to like basically document like a plant I would find so I could like have the features I need to identify it, and then also be able to remind myself later like this is what this plant is. So if I see it again, I can um, I don't have to like repeat the entire process.
Right.
And so I've been using it as as documentation, and in the process I was like, some of these photos are actually pretty nice.
Yeah.
um so really like the photos that I put on Instagram are like a tiny percentage of the photos I actually take. They're the ones that
Wow.
I'm like, oh look, this one's actually turned out well. Huh, cool. I'll put it up there, you know. So my equipment is my Samsung Galaxy S7, you know. Uh, I know nothing about like I just point it and zoom in and click it, and I'm like, well, that sucks. And I try again, try again. And some plants, you know, some plants I don't get any photos that are like actually good photographs, and I just don't post those ones. But
Right.
I keep the photographs. I put them on. There's this app iNaturalist, which is
Oh
super
wow.
cool, and it lets anyone you see anything in nature, you know, whether it's a plant, an animal, whatever, and you can
Wow.
take a photo or take photos and you upload it and say, hey, here's where I was and when, and this is what I saw, and then anyone can see it and say, oh, I think it's this or I think it's that. And people use this for research too. So there are it's like a way of documenting like what's out here in nature because partly because it's just kind of interesting. I mean, that's the main reason I do it.
Totally.
And then also like you know, the people who manage like lands and try to manage wildlife populations and plants, they don't have like enough resources to actually go out and look at what's everywhere. So it can be helpful for people doing that kind of research and management to be like, oh look, someone took a photo of that there, you know, that may be significant. um
Wow.
so like for instance, I found like randomly, like I've been doing, you know, I've been focusing on plants, but if I see some like cool animal or something, I'll take a photo and post it and just be like, I won't even try to identify it. I'll just be like, hey, if someone wants to like tell me what that is, awesome. And there's some I think it was called like a cascade tree frog I found in the Klamath Mountains to the west of here last summer, and some researchers just like hit me up and like, hey, like, can you like let us know where this photo you obscured the coordinates of this photo? We're researching this frog. It's apparently it's
Wow.
like a threatened like species in the area, and so like I didn't know that, you know, but like now it's like the fact that I put that up there, it's like helpful for the research of these people trying to conserve that species.
That's
So it's
great,
pretty
man.
cool.
That
Yeah.
is cool. All right, so dibs on that Cascade Tree Frog photo. I want to use it as a promo um, for this podcast episode,
Sure.
and also if you still have a link to those guys, I would love to talk to them. Some tree frog scientists. Oh man, that'd be incredible. I would definitely talk to them.
I'll send you the I don't actually know them personally at all, but I'll
Right.
send you their like iNaturalist link if you remind me. Yeah.
I will. I will. I won't forget. Very cool about the botany photography. So let's dig deep for a couple more questions on that.
Sure,
so
sure.
um, I noticed like I mean the resolution on the photos that you do post on Instagram is pretty crazy. Like you can see like the fibers on these plants, stuff like that. When are you do you have set times? Are you ever out very early in the morning to take these photos? Stuff, you know?
No, I really should be. I mean, I honestly like the lighting is the biggest struggle, and I'll actually my general thing, if I can, is I'll take a photo of the plants in my own shadow. So I'll use my shade to try to create like relatively less harsh lighting conditions. Um, yeah, everything is super lo-fi and very like I love the fact that people like the photos. You know, it's
Yeah.
great. But it's also hilarious because it really is just
Yeah.
the effort is mostly going on my side is mostly going into learning about the plants and learning how to identify them. The photos have really just been a a side product of that
Yeah.
in the end. Yeah.
That's a really neat side product. They seem so well curated. I think you like developed this like secret mastery of flowers for Instagram.
I appreciate that. That's so nice. But
Yeah.
no.
I don't know how else to put it. I mean, you know, like sometimes I look at my Instagram and I'm like, that looks like shit, you know, like um That's that was so fun, man. All right, so any like top three highlights in the botany photography world where you're just like, oh, this is a magical moment. I got to get this flower. I'm like freaking out deep down inside that I'm even seeing this flower, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there's the flower that I haven't posted to my Instagram yet, but I sent it to you. The Lassen Paintbrush, this pink paintbrush is the common name. It's Castanea lassenensis is the scientific name, and it's a rare plant that only grows or mostly only grows in the park in Lassen Volcanic National Park in meadows there by the sides of mountains and on volcanic soils. And I was out like the day I found it. Like I knew this plant was in the park somewhere. I hadn't seen photos of it though before. I could have looked it up, but I just hadn't done that.
Right.
And I was kind of wandering around this marsh and finding a lot of really cool plants. And right as I was about to leave, I see like a paintbrush in like the middle of a meadow that's like a bright red paintbrush. I go over, I'm like, oh, this is cool. But I'm like, it didn't have like the identifying features I really needed to identify like that genus.
Uh-huh.
And so I kind of was like, well, I don't know what to do with this one. But then I turn around and then just like there's just hundreds of this rare paintbrush, this much smaller like pink one. Um, and
Wow.
uh, and yeah, it was just like it was just amazing to see them all and just like to run across them by accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous plant. Yeah, so that was one that was really exciting.
All
Um,
right. So I'm actually gonna see if I can pull up your flower plant here for a like a video exclusive, and then we'll close it up. So what are we at? We're on Saturday. Where are you in your rotation, by the way? Are you in the 8 days or are you on the 6 days?
right now this is the off season, so I'm working, so I'm volunteering doing botany related stuff at the park right now, working 4 days on and then 3 days off, so I'm at the beginning of a 3-day weekend right now.
All
um
right. Terrific,
yeah,
man. I hope it's a good one. And a little extra
that's
high
the
res
one.
there. There it
That's the
is.
one. Yeah.
Many apparently. I didn't know that. That's really awesome. That must have been great. I love that you can
It was,
see like each little petal or whatever it is.
yeah,
Super
I mean,
fun, man.
it's it's a complicated it's a complicated plant because the pink parts there actually aren't even the petals. They look like petals, but they're actually like modified leaves. And the flower
Whoa.
itself is that little like white and green like weird little hat looking thing. Kind of looks like a peaked cap or something, or like a little like
Oh, I see it.
uh yeah, it's so the actual flower, yeah, that little white and green thing with that's like kind of pointy, yeah, is
Yeah.
the actual flower. So yeah, that's partly why there's like an interesting genus, is that the plant itself is bizarre. It's also parasitic, so it lives partly off sucking energy from the roots of other plants, I believe.
Oh wow,
Um,
no way. So is it
yeah,
invasive or just
no, it's
parasitic?
not. It's
Wow.
not. Yeah, there's parasitic. I'm actually like really parasitic plants are my coolest. They're the coolest plants to me. Are these they'll like either depending on like the plant, they're either get part of their energy from fungus under the ground or from the roots of other plants.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like in some areas there are parasitic plants that can be invasive, but but in a lot of places it's just like there are these plants that have found their own little niches that they just kind of don't really, they don't mess things up really for other plants. They just kind of
Yeah.
steal
No,
some. And
that's awesome. I love you having you on, man. It's such an adventure. We'll have to get into parasite plants next time.
good talking to
Because
you, Will.
yeah, talking about titles. Again, if I saw a book that was like parasite plants, I think that's your first book, dude.
That would be sick. That would be sick. Parasitic plants, man, they're my jam. They also look super weird. That's partly the thing. Is like the colors tend to be strange. Flowers often are really strange. The whole
Yeah.
thing is like it
I
looks
actually
super
really I
strange.
really appreciate it because I asked you for like you sent me that flower because I basically asked for one of your flower photos as a
Yeah.
promo, and I was like, wow, he sent me like the weirdest but like most like strangely alluring flower.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite. That's my favorite photo I've taken. So
No
yeah,
way, man.
that's why I figured I'd send it to you. Yeah.
All right, you heard it here first. All right, so I'll have a link to your Instagram so people can see what we're talking about. Yeah, Kyle, man, thanks for coming on again. This was super fun.
Sounds good.
All right,
Good
I'll
talking to you,
actually
man.
I'll press the stop and I'll just say cheerio
Sure.
without being so on the air type thing. All right, bye everyone.